Hello YouTube, back again with another video. This video is just definitely going to be about talismans, um, veves, uh, Satan, Samael, whatsoever my experience. Definitely, I definitely want to talk about talismans, veves. Talismans can range from anything from gemstones to symbols, to veves. Veves, I know they're used in voodoo ceremonies, but they can also be used in forms of talismans as well. They can be carried. If I'm correct, they're called point in Creole. I guess they call wongas nowadays or so. But back when I was coming up, they was called point. But as far as the talismans go, I definitely say you got to be aware of what you're dealing with because there's aggressive forces and there's lightweight forces. I call lightweight forces the I guess the non-aggressive forces. But even though even those forces you have to be careful with whatsoever when you're dealing with talismans itself, because these things are alive. They're live energy. Yes, you can write a symbol on a piece of paper, but you behind that piece of paper, that is a way of contacting the forces. So when you heat these things up, or when I say heat them up, you basically charge them. Definitely they take on a life. It's like they activate the spirit on the astral realm or spirit realm. So therefore, basically, when you have their seal, you have their doorbell. Not even their doorbell, but you can say their doorbell because that's their way of accessing them. Veves pretty much are the same thing. When you look at the Goetia symbols itself, they're basically veves. You can use the Goetia symbols as veves on the ground, as well as you can use them as talismans as well. Veve is the same thing. You can use them as symbols on the ground and you can use them as talismans. But the thing is, a lot of people are not aware of is that these are live energies. It's not just something that you can just take and just let sit down. That's how you piss the force off, because it's like when you have the symbols, it's just like making an altar to them. When you're carrying a wonga or a point whatsoever, definitely you're carrying a live energy. Same thing with these Goetia symbols. You're carrying a live energy. So therefore, it's like you're carrying your altar in your pocket. So therefore, if you go days without charging your energy, that energy is going to become very angry, very violent, and it will show up in your environment. Again, if you're dealing with the Goetia and you're dealing with the Pitwa spirits, you're dealing with their veves. These are hot spirits. They're very freaking angry, very hot. So therefore, definitely you have to use caution when dealing with their veves, But now, I want to talk about Samael, basically Satan, because a lot of people think Samael, a lot of people say Samael, it's a debate whatsoever, theoretical debate itself, but I'm not going to talk on a biblical stance of, the concept of Satan, because if you're going on a Bible note, you're dealing with a whole nother understanding of how spirits actually work, So therefore, I say, when you're dealing with the concept of Satan, you have to move away from the traditional Christian view of Satan. But as far as when you're dealing with the concept of Satan, Satan itself is basically a term in Hebrew which states adversary. This is just from theoretical research itself, which is adversary. So when you're talking about Satan itself, you're not dealing with a name, you're dealing with a title, a label itself, So when you're talking about the adversary, when you go into the New Testament, you have Jesus making reference to Peter as being an adversary. So when you're talking about Satan, it's not necessarily a name, it's a title. So when we talk about the angel who wrestled with Jacob, many Jewish texts and Talmud have referred to the angel as being Samael. So this title of Satan is reference to the angel Samael, which is basically called the poison of God, or basically the angel of death. So therefore, when you're dealing with this force, basically it's the same. It's one and the same as dealing with the force of Satan whatsoever. So when you're talking about Satan, basically you're talking about Samael, but it's a force that's responsible for destruction and basically reaping out divine justice, on people whatsoever. But anyhow, I say this from my experience. What I can say about Samael or Satan, what for people that are basically Christians or whatever, I would say that that force is not that force is a very aggressive force, very dangerous, very destructive. I wouldn't say dangerous. I would say, I would say, well, you can say dangerous. It depends on what you call danger. I've dealt with forces that cause more calamity, more disaster than that force. What I known that it did to me by messing up on a ritual. Once, well, basically, I was walking on ice the other day, and the talisman, I basically didn't charge the talisman enough. I was walking on ice, I slipped and fell on ice. Yeah, that's what happened whatsoever. And there's another scenario where I was in the club whatsoever, where I accidentally caught. This is like in the past when I didn't know. This is recent. The one about slipping on the ice. I remember in the past I basically dealt with trying to evoke the force of Satan whatsoever. And what happened was I dealt with it. I had the force contained. But basically, basically what happened on the dance floor was that I accidentally caught a knee to the face, which basically damaged the nerves in my face for about, on the right side, I think, yeah, the right side of my face for about a year. So that's when I basically made the correlation and said, okay, so Satan's energy has to be either between a Mars energy and a Gemini energy. But recently finding out, dealing with that energy even more in the present, like recently, like now, I found out that it's a Mars energy. So when you're talking about Satan, you know what I'm saying, you're talking about a Mars, that title, it's in reference to a Mars energy, Samael. So those of people that don't know, basically, for you people that talk about your Satanists and stuff like that, Satan refers to, basically, it's a reference to Samael. And if you deal with that energy, you'll see that that energy is closely knit with the name Satan itself. I'm gonna give another example. This is just the mystical understanding of this stuff, not the biblical theoretical church shit. I'm not dealing with that. But dealing with that energy. I was working for a guy. Another thing I would definitely say, when you basically have that energy of Satan working for you, you want to basically take a lot of things that people tell you into consideration. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, if somebody tells you to be careful, you be careful. Because when that energy is in the environment, it tells you things through people. And it means every word. So basically, I was at a customer. I'm going to give you another example. I was at a customer's house the other day. The customer told me, watch out when you're pulling out of his driveway. Now, I listened to what he told me. As soon as I pulled my car out, a car came just driving by, just speeding right by. If I didn't pay attention, or if I moved out of the driveway just in the nick of time, that car would have just smashed the backside of my vehicle. So when you're dealing with that energy, everything is fast paced. Everything is moving fast, and you got to listen to every word people tell you. So therefore, if they're basically about to jump in your car and somebody says to you, drive safely, you better drive safely. Because anything basically is letting you know in advance. You have to basically listen. When you're dealing with that force, you have to listen. You can't just be on some airheaded shit, just take every word for granted. Because when you're dealing with that force, you're dealing with a lot of fast-paced activity, and you're dealing with some dangerous shit. So basically, matter of fact, as I was driving recently, this happened, I was on a highway, and I noticed that there was a big-ass accident with like 2 trucks on the highway. And that's what let me know that that force basically is responsible for basically destruction, because the trucks were like, too long, I don't know the distance of the trucks, but there are 2 big trucks that had a big accident on the highway, where one turned over, and that's when I was like, okay, wow, this force is a very destructive force. Basically, when you're dealing with energy like that, the thing is you have to look at your environment. What you see in the environment is a reflection of the energy. It's not a coincidence where to say, oh well, I just saw this. No, when you have the forces work with you, what you see in the environment is what they're capable of, is what they're about, So, but basically, that's my take on the whole Samael, Hasatan, Satan thing whatsoever, Definitely for those that are into Satanism, definitely you want to look up the angel, Samael, because, yeah, definitely, they say it's a consort of Lilith itself, But yeah, it's definitely an angel that you can definitely work with, Yeah, and it definitely kicks ass, But definitely keep in mind that it's a force that deals with wreaking out vengeance, and it basically, if you're trying to do any hexes and curses, that's definitely a force that you want to use, because yeah, it definitely goes about hurting people physically. So with that, I conclude this video. Hopefully this was informative. Basically gave you another view from on the whole concept of Satan. Like, subscribe, leave your comments. It is what it is. Thank you for watching this video, and I am out.